Welcome to the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up Show, episode number 162 for the week of 24 October 2021. Virtual crime, Wardriving, Iran, SEO, QR code attacks, Avast, CISA, Windows 11, and Zuck strikes back. I'm Doug White, and this is the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Every 11 seconds, there's a new ransomware attack. Oil pipelines, universities, corporations, all paying millions of dollars. Barracuda says, don't pay the ransom. Before a ransomware attack occurs, train your teams to recognize an attack and use anti-phishing technology. Protect your applications, and they can't get onto your network. Simple backup and restore solutions quickly recover your data without paying the ransom. Build your ransomware protection plan now by visiting securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
All right, we're going to wrap up all the shows. On Application Security Weekly number 170, John and Mike had Ashish Rajan, the head of security and podcast host at Cloud Security Podcast, on. Ashish was on talking about how SAST, which is static application security testing, is going to die in the world of DevOps and cloud development. That was definitely of interest to me. I mean, I keep thinking about, how we actually started doing some DevSecOps, despite us telling people that for years and years and years. They actually started trying to do it, and then DevOps starts changing, and then, boom, here it is. So all of a sudden, it's like, well, we almost got there with this old model that changed. Now we're into a new model. So check that out if you're doing that kind of thing. Even if you're not. On Business Security Weekly number 236, Ben, Jason, and Matt talked with Renee Charun, the deputy CISO at Fortinet. Renee was on to talk about, a lot of scary stuff, like the expanding attack surface, or the ever-expanding attack surface, which is kind of like my pant size. Constant changes in the landscape, growing cyber skills gap, and how leaders need actionable advice from people that actually have experience with all this. That was kind of like that stuff we saw from Missouri, right, where you got like the governor, talking about hacking and all this stuff, and obviously he doesn't know anything at all about what they're talking about. So definitely that. And they also talked about their book, Fight Fire with Fire. In the second segment, CISOs approach the board with precision and simplicity. Layoffs taught me to never make 3 powerful leadership mistakes, 6 zero trust myths and misconceptions, and of course they always have a ton of stories in there, so check that one out. On Enterprise Security Weekly 248, Adrian, Katie Teitler, Paul, and Tyler Shields had Jamie Moles, the senior technical marketing manager at ExtraHop, on the show. Jamie was on talking about encryption and the various techniques attackers use to hide using encryption, but they also talked about common objections about decrypting things and some pretty interesting ideas about the decryption concept. They did have a demo of how ExtraHop reveals network detection and decrypts network packets, and the response platform decrypts traffic during attack. So it was pretty interesting stuff. And there's a lot to talk about with encryption and VPNs and decryption, and when you can decrypt, and how do you prevent attackers from all that. On Security and Compliance Weekly number 92, Adrian, Jeff, and Tyler Robinson had Thomas Sager and Tony Sager, but it's not spelled the same, so I don't think they're related. So it's father and son. The mystery voice in my head just means father and son. So they are related. Thomas is an associate cybersecurity engineer for CIS, and Tony is a senior vice president and chief evangelist at CIS. They were on talking about the importance of mapping security frameworks and how CIS creates and supports those mappings with real-world examples and issues. I mean, if you never use CIS, you know that they have their own models of product support. They have their own models, best practice, and so forth. So a pretty interesting segment to check out. I didn't know they were father and son. That's cool. On Security Weekly News, I guess that means the industry is maturing, right? When you get to the point where you can actually have fathers and sons in the same industry. On the Security Weekly News number 161, Jason Wood talked about Conti Ransom Gang and how they were selling access to victims, or clients as they call them, which is pretty amusing. On Paul's Security Weekly number 716, oh my. Not only was it a crazy day in the Northeast with a massive nor'easter, which knocked out all the power, it knocked out my power and my internet, and basically was like hurricane force winds. It was also the first night of the new night, which is Wednesday for Pulse Security Weekly. So a big change there. I mean, PSW's been on Thursday night so long, it's hard to imagine what to do this evening. But you know, change is always a good thing. And no, I don't know why they moved it. Something to do with sunspots, the price of bourbon on Thursdays, and a missing vintage copy of Swank magazine or something like that. I'm not sure exactly. On the first segment, Roger Grimes, data-driven defense evangelist at KnowBe4, was on. Roger was talking about how ransomware is now very sophisticated, which is certainly true, and how these sophisticated attacks typically occur. Roger was also talking about what you may want to do to prevent ransomware and how firewalls are not really the solution at this point. And I really agreed with that statement because, you know, if Burton Accounting decides to download TrickBot, the firewall isn't going to help. I mean, maybe you've got a firewall that's that sophisticated and somebody monitoring it, but, you know, I mean, honestly, it's just not going to work. Roger wrote the ransomware protection playbook, and as such, you may want to hear what he had to say about it. On the second segment, Matt Linton is a chaos specialist at Google, one of my favorite job titles. A chaos specialist at Google. Matt was going to talk about where the term incident commander came from and what it actually means. It's mostly about disaster recovery and incident response stuff. I actually knew the answer to this one when I saw the segment because I took all the training and I actually served as an incident commander in an exercise. And let me tell you, drink a bit too much the night before, walk in bleary to the exercise expecting to be a team leader that's going to basically, you know, do some simulated team activities like driving over to this other place, and then have them tell you the incident commander was killed on the way into work. Yeah, and they forgot to mention that it was part of the exercise. So I was like, wait, he's what? And they were like, oh, no, it's part of the exercise. He's not actually dead. And I was like, oh, he just wanted a day off, right? But all of a sudden, you know, I was the incident commander in a national level exercise, and that members of the Joint Chiefs and maybe the president, and one of the good presidents too, is possibly on the calls that day. It's time, you know, to go to the WC, splash some water in your face, and go out and save the simulated world, even if I did feel and look a lot more like Happy than Tony Stark. And in the third segment, of course, the news. Yeah, I know, I kind of babbled there a little bit. It's okay. I just had to sign a whole bunch of papers before I came over here, so, you know, I'm kind of like wound up. The threat of the week for me is going to have to be, you know, it's going to have to be virtual organized crime, I guess. I was thinking about this, and I always try to look at the news, and I try to think about what this week sort of caught my eye. And this time it was virtual organized crime. You know, I mean, organized crime's always been around, right? I mean, I'm sure in ancient Samaria, some guy with a nickname like, you know, Steve the Ice Pick or Johnny Bones or something was shaking down the locals down at the local bazaar where they were selling grain or whatever. And I mean, organized crime is pretty much a New York standard and, you know, Northeastern standard, at least in terms of storytelling. I don't know anything about actual organized crime because I've never had any dealings with it. I've never known anybody who had any dealings with it. You know, so everything I know comes from movies and TV, which means, of course, it's real, right? But I know it is a real thing. I mean, somebody is running drugs across the border, and they're unloading them in that garage that you stumbled into that time when you had a flat tire. Someone runs those illegal gambling dens that you stumbled into once when you were looking for the kitchen, and somebody runs that place in Jersey where they sell stolen guitars that you stumbled into that time looking for a cheap deal on a used Les Paul. I mean, so it makes a lot of sense that as the world moved into virtual space, well, crime would move into virtual space as well. I mean, I remember one time, a long time, I was looking at Silk Road, and this is when this stuff was first going on, and I told my friend, would you really send $500 worth of Bitcoin to some guy named Dog Rapist in the hopes that they would actually send you heroin? I mean, you know, it's on a website with an IP address. And my friend said, well, one time I bought some cocaine from a guy named Dog Food Baker on a street corner, and that turned out okay. I was like, His name was Dog Food, and he was like, yeah, they called him that because he crossed some people up. Well, anyway, you get my point. Crime's going to happen. It's just economics. I mean, if somebody's willing to buy a stolen Les Paul because it's a lot cheaper than a new one at Manny's Music, somebody will steal said Les Paul, and someone else will sell it, and somebody will buy it. And if they could do all that where they could skip through the world of jurisdiction and sovereignty, all the more so. I mean, think about all the risk associated with buying that guitar in Fort Lee. The place might be being watched. Maybe the guy who it was stolen from is going to see you buying it and come over there with a ball bat. And, you know, if you could buy it on the dark web and have it delivered to that little old lady that lives up the block who never comes out when they ring the bell, well, I mean, bada bing, right? I mean, so anyway, this came up because this week the Groove ransomware gang called for an all-out offensive against the United States because the U.S. was picking on poor Revil. And Revil was all but shut down after the Colonial Pipeline incident, and they sort of had to vanish for a while. And, you know, the U.S. got out the old ball bats and took them to school, and so they were shut down. And Groove had these poorly worded threats. It sounded like a brain-damaged parrot reading a Google translation of a Finnish textbook on DeLorean repair. But the idea is there, you know, that they're threatening this. Paulie and Tony basically make the city councilman an offer that they can't refuse. Approve this apartment project or we break your knees. It's simple, you know, good old, you know, movie, TV, gangland stuff. I mean, I could really see that going off in that direction. It's probably already happened and is continuing to happen. I mean, think about SolarWinds, right? How many other supply chain API type threats may be out there lurking? We all have to know that there are more. I mean, that's just the one that happened. Good morning, Senator. My name is Ernst Blofeld, and if you don't want us to delete all your crypto wallets and release these photos of you with a baboon, 2 gallons of yogurt, and your second cousin's friend in that hotel in New Jersey, well, you know, you need to stop going after my good friends down at Smirsh. Oh, and we like James Bond brought over to this Motel 6 in Cleveland so we can bash him up. Now, I mean, I could see this happening. I mean, all this works pretty well virtually. You can pay for things with the old days of the Big Lebowski. Remember, they were supposed to throw a briefcase full of money off of a bridge while they were driving over it. And yeah, I mean, you could pay for that with Venmo or Bitcoin, and you don't have to worry about some kid stealing it out of the car. I mean, I don't know who Groove is. Maybe it's some kid in Minnesota, or it's some kind of Shinjuku girls working out of a steampunk laundromat in Taiwan or something. Who knows? We did get a news story yesterday talking about Revil and how this Russian billionaire has been associated now with Revil by the German police. But there is a reason we call it organized crime. It's organized. It runs like a business. It's not like some guy named Chet who decided that even though he smoked a whole lot of meth this morning, robbing that foosball table at the arcade was probably worth the jail time. You know, so I think the organized crime model is making, or has already made, a very nice transition into the virtual world, and it's going to continue to do so. And add to that, nation states acting like mob families and putting virtual button men on the streets, fill in a dozen more gangland sayings here, and you got a business model. Al Capone and Tony Soprano would have loved this model. So I think this is going to escalate. And while you're going to see some headlines when nation states are being threatened by hacker gangs, but you won't see all the other behind-the-scenes actions where, Paulie Walnuts is going down to the local senator's office and saying, if you don't want these pictures put out on the internet, I think you better vote our way on this asbestos removal product. But, I mean, then again, this has been going on since cave people on one rock shook down the new guy without a tail, and so it goes. So, and now the news. I had to lead with this. Being an old Wardriving fan, and even having gone so far as to fly a student around in a Cessna 150 so they could test their Yagi out from altitude, way back when we did that, I saw this article and I really found it interesting. Wardriving's been around as long as there's been any sort of Wi-Fi, and a lot of people have used it for attacks, for fun, for research, etc. But this article is talking about CyberArk and an employee named Ido Horvich. And Ido Horvich basically decided he was going to experiment with it in the modern age and found something pretty interesting in Israel. 70% of the Wi-Fi network passwords could be obtained in the Tel Aviv community where he was trying this experiment out. And now here's the thing. I mean, he did have to crack passwords, But, he was basically using good hacking techniques and outthinking the opposition and exploiting weakness. Ito found that when he moved to a new apartment and he asked one of the neighbors if he could use their Wi-Fi while he was waiting for his own Wi-Fi install to show up, they gave him their password, and it was it some unguessable string of garbage longer than the Declaration of Independence? No, it was their cell phone number. So he tested the theory that a lot of them may be like that. And so one of the things he put into his basic dictionary attack was that if he used, he could take that first part of the phone number and start guessing. And of course, if you can cut it down. So he used a $50 wireless NIC in an Ubuntu laptop. That sounds awfully familiar to me because this was exactly what we were doing in that Cessna. And he used hex dump tool. He captured 5,000 password hashes. Once he did that, he started trying to crack the hashes and had to use some good old crypto theory. So Israel uses 05 as the first digit of the phone number. It's the international code. And that reduced his space to 8 digits. So the point is that this is pretty much spot on whether they used phone numbers or not. It's a huge threat since a lot of these people are working from home. And he cracked 70% of these 5,000 passwords. That doesn't really surprise me. I mean, think about it. Small businesses, people at home, if you got weak Wi-Fi passwords and somebody's out there cracking them, they may be able to get into corporate networks because if they can jump through your home or your small business into another business that you're connected to, this suddenly becomes a thing again. Make them work for it, people. Come on. Iran was struggling with a cyber attack that left fuel stations around the country shut down since the attack resulted in an e-card that is used by Iranian citizens to get a subsidized price on fuel, and the e-card stopped working. So National Iranian Oil Products Distribution Company operates more than 3,500 fuel stations in Iran, and back in July, the Iranian rail transport system was shut down using an attack that had the number 64411 up on the train boards, and they put it all over the place. And this week's attack actually had the same number, 64411, displayed on gas pumps instead of the price or whatever it was showing up. They had some pictures in the article of gas pumps showing this number, and so this number, of course, is the office phone of the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. Khamenei, yeah, that's how you say it. So the attack has been described as being a politically motivated attack on the supply chain. And I guess if nothing else, it really starts to illustrate how many people are starting to target critical infrastructure and attacking critical infrastructure. Now, while we may not like Iran very much in the United States these days, these attacks should definitely make us start to, again, continue to examine our own critical infrastructure, because somebody's going to get unhappy about something, right? I mean, considering how easily startled and feral everyone is right now, every day you see one of these where somebody attacked a flight attendant because the flight attendant came back and said, "Oh, sir, I'm sorry, we're out of orange juice," and the person goes off the hinge. And I literally saw one yesterday where somebody broke a bunch of facial bones in a flight attendant. Seriously? I mean, I've been on planes where they came back and said the only food they had left was these fish tacos. I'm not even making that up. That was on a flight. It was on a flight from Honolulu to San Francisco, and we were way in the back of the plane, and it smells so bad. And by the time they got back to the back of the plane, guess what? I'm sorry, sir. We're out of the chicken and we're out of the ravioli. All we have left are the fish tacos, and I'm advising you not to eat them. And nobody jumped up and started pounding on anybody. Come on. But people are very easily triggered these days. They don't put enough Jimmys on your ice cream cone, and all of a sudden you decide you're going to take out Friendlies. So I'm serious. I think we need to look at this before that continues to happen here. Menlo Security said that SEO poisoning was being used by Revil and others to drive traffic to ransomware sites as a new part of the ransomware business model. See, they have a business model now. If SEO, which is search engine poisoning, is a tactic where illicit websites, or sometimes licit, what's the opposite of illicit? Legit? Licit? Illicit? Yeah, licit. where illicit websites too are used to push the sites to the top of the Google search results, and that of course drives traffic when somebody searches for a legitimate subject. It's a lot harder now to get people to click on phishing links with all the training that they've had. But if you search for, say, how to get cat pee out of a leather sofa, do you really take the time to evaluate all the hits and make sure that the one you're going to click on is legitimate, or you just click the one at the top of the list? I mean, think about that. How many times a day do you search and click something without looking? You search, you click, and it looks official. It looks like a reasonable site, and when you click on the answer link on the page, it downloads it. So this particular attack downloads a PDF and it drops a payload on your system. Revil was using bootloader and Solar Marker backdoors to infect systems using this tactic. In two of the cases, the bad guys had hacked legit illicit WordPress sites that had good Google rankings already, and then they exploited a WordPress plugin flaw that would allow them to upload the bad PDF onto the site directory structure. So be careful. I mean, think about how many links you click today and how many of those could have been problematic. You click something, it says log in, please, and it's just that easy. Abnormal Security reported a malware campaign then that uses QR codes to sneak links in via email. It's a lot harder to detect. And again, very much like the last story, the codes are often disguised as a missed voicemail or something. And of course, because it's a QR code, the enterprise gateway scanner doesn't pick it up because there's no malicious link, there's no malicious attachment or anything like that. It's just a QR code. And again, the QR codes are basically being created by the hackers. They create new ones every day, so they're different all the time. The Better Business Bureau reported in July there was a huge uptick in complaints about scams using QR code. And since you can't tell what the code says with your eyes, it's pretty common to just scan it with your phone and not really have a lot of information about it, and then you go there. I mean, you think about that. Much like the SEO links that you click. Users are they're very used to and comfortable being given QR codes in a restaurant. I was done that the other day. Television set connection, did that one the other day. Bitcoin wallets and all those kind of things. Mobile Iron said that in their survey of 4,400 people last year, 84% of them had used a QR code recently. So again, this makes it even more difficult to spot those malicious links before you go to them. And often you're going to go there when you're trying to do something quickly, like set up your TV so you can watch Dune. I got to connect HBO Max to my TV and the QR, okay, and boom. Avast released a decryption tool that will recover some of the files encrypted by Atom Silo, Babook, and Lockfile ransomware. Avast said their key may not work with files which have unknown proprietary or no format. I don't know what no format means, but Bleeping Computer tested the Atom File tool and found that it did work pretty well on encrypted files. So despite Atom Silo and Lockfile being pretty sophisticated ransomware, it is possible to fight back a little bit, and so Avast does have a tool. That's a Czech Republic-based company that makes antivirus. CISA and the NSA released guidance this week for securing cloud-native 5G infrastructure. The guidance is targeted at service providers and system integrators that build and configure cloud-type service. This was added to the Enduring Security Framework, or the ESF as they call it, that came out in May of 2021. And it is based on engaging with experts across the industry to identify 5G security risk. Considering the ability to move laterally across cloud-based networks, 5G cloud infrastructure makes for a really juicy target space for groups in ransomware and other types of attacks, especially attacks that can spread automatically or not. I mean, you can spread manually too. Some of the recommendations included secure identity and access management in the cloud, patching secure configurations, network segmentation, always a big one with me, monitoring for lateral movement, and the development of analytics to detect adversarial presence in the network. There are 3 more parts of this guidance expected in this area related to the isolation of network resources, data in transit, and integrity of infrastructure that are due out this year. It's a pretty interesting read, even if you aren't doing 5G infrastructure. So it may be worth your time to check that out. And it had some pretty good advice. Microsoft continued to roll out Windows 11 this week and is now offering the upgrade to more devices. Microsoft stated that you should upgrade your devices to Windows 11 to take advantage of the latest features and advanced protections from security threats. They also stated that all eligible Windows 10 devices will be offered the upgrade by mid-2022. To do the upgrade, you must be on Windows 10 2004 or later and have installed all the patches updated through September 2021. The PC Health Check tool, which is now being force installed on your Windows 10 installation, will determine if the device is compatible with Windows 11. That process started last Friday, so if you've updated Windows, it probably already had that the health check tool installed. It can be uninstalled, but Bleeping Computer reported that uninstalling it didn't always work, and it may well reinstall itself. There are some instructions in the article to prevent it from reinstalling if you really want to do that and you're concerned about it. And finally, well, it's been announced now. Facebook is changing its name. I think they're trying to shift the focus away from their dealings in social media and all the bad press they've been getting, and more towards what their claim is they're trying to get away from being only social media and more towards focusing on a virtual world. And they decided to change their name to Kali the Destroyer. No, I'm kidding. It actually changing it to Meta, if you haven't seen that already. It's actually sort of scary to me because Meta would be a kind of overarching, all-controlling sort of thing. Meta user, that kind of thing. Yeah. Facebook did announce it is moving into virtual headsets and focus on the metaverse, as they call it, with Facebook being a secondary focus in the future. Facebook's been under fire since a whistleblower released 10,000-plus documents illustrating that Facebook was aware of how much polarization and angst their platform was causing. The rebranding will officially occur in the summer of 2022, and that, of course, and that the company would eventually be known. Zuck said it would eventually be called Metaverse, but in the short run, it was going to be called Meta. Zuckerberg said they were doing a smart glasses partnership with Ray-Ban and a video conferencing system that would use VR headsets, not evil VR headsets. He said they would only be used for good. They also claimed that this will create 10,000 new metaverse-related jobs, but that they would not be hiring the Winklevoss twins. I, for one, welcome our new corporate meta overlords. I'm the Pink Lady, and that's a news wrap-up for the week of 24 October 2021. See you next week on the Security Weekly News.